Brad, probably not the Eagles team you would have thought a few weeks ago that you'd be playing. What do you make of them?
Still, obviously some important players have been omitted for them due to injury, but they're still an outstanding lineup, and it's probably the first time we've really seen the Eagles go with a forward structure that's not the four talls, and it'll look a little bit different for the first time in probably a couple of years. So that in itself presents some challenges for us because there's the uncertainty of it all, and I watched with interest last week at Etihad against Richmond, just the flexibility they've got anyway. I think the four talls in their forward line has been a real strength for West Coast, but I thought Ashton Hams and Chris Maston and those types of players going through the forward line were really dangerous too. So I'm also conscious they've got a production line of midfielders on their list. So we haven't seen a lot of Tom Swift of late, but I've respected him for a long time. So I think they've got a number of players that can come in and do the job.
They've obviously lost 2 bigs over 1 week. That's probably fairly different from them. Do you think it'll affect their structure very much?
That's probably more of a question for them. I think Scott Lycett's a player that was very highly rated as a junior, and we certainly rated him very highly. And if they want to keep that structure, they obviously can with him. He's a ruckman-sized key forward. So they could keep that if they want to, but I think they've got a lot of players that have been in good form in the waffle. Jacob Brennan's another player who can come into their side, and the midfielders I've mentioned. So they're in the fortunate position while they've lost Nikoski and they've lost Kennedy and a few others. They don't look to be struggling to cover it too much.
Do you think you can exploit them at your end though a little bit? Obviously losing Schofield has been a really important player for him. I'm not sure if Brennan exactly replaces him, maybe if he does come in. Sure. Yeah. Do you think he might be able to do it all, might be able to exploit him a little bit? If you can get enough support?
No, I don't think we'll be going with that attitude, because Darren Glass is an All-Australian defender, and I would think Eric McKenzie will come back in after his ear infection. So I think they're some quality defenders, and we saw the job Eric McKenzie did on Lance Franklin a couple of weeks ago. So to think that we're going to get an advantage with our key forwards against their key backs, I think we're probably clutching at straws there. And we're just after a really good contest in that part of the ground.
Sorry, Brad. As well as the players have actually lost, psychologically, if these guys keep going down, do you think it can affect morale at their club?
Well, potentially, but the key factor there is that they keep winning. So I think the losing Nikoski and losing Lacroix at the start of the year was, from a lot of pundits, probably saw the end to their premiership campaign. We can see how premature that statement was. With Ashton Hams coming in and Hill coming in, playing some fantastic footy. So they've been able to replace those two positions really successfully. And while they're winning and players keep coming in and playing their roles for them, I think that actually boosts morale. So we're not expecting West Coast to put into performance anything less than the performances they've put in so far this year. So it's going to be a huge challenge for us.
But Cox and that new era with arguably the best rugby competition. Obviously you've got McIntosh. Can you remember goals in this week, do you think?
That's a really good question, and one that's probably going to take the whole week to answer. Because it's not only the ruck duel there. It's as Steve mentioned, it's the forward structure that we go with as well. Whether we try and go a little bit taller. The weather's been pretty wet over in Perth, so all those things we've got to take into account. But what I can say is Todd did everything that was asked for of him back in the VFL. 64 hit-outs, a couple of goals, 22 possessions, and played with the intensity that he played with last year. So that's what we asked him to go back and do, and he held up his end of the bargain. So he'll come, he'll be strongly considered.
But you said you watched them against Richmond on the weekend. Yeah. How much can you take out of that game, knowing that when they go back to Patersons Stadium, they're just such a different team than what they would be playing at Etihad?
No, it'll take a lot out of the game. I think that all their good players played really well, and I probably disagree to a certain extent, Tony. I think that they've proven over the last 18 months to 2 years that they play well everywhere. I think they've just become what we want to become. Now, we don't want to become a good side on the road. We just want to become a good side. I think West Coast are now a genuinely good side, and they perform very well everywhere. So, sure, their home ground advantage is significant because it's a unique ground and it's one they know very well. But we're conscious we've got a pretty good record over there too.
Brett, on the flip side of all these Eagles questions, how are you telling your players to approach this match?
Oh, look, we were really disappointed in Sydney 2 weeks ago. We really went over there with a mindset that we were going to take the game up to Sydney, and we were disappointed with the result. So, it's another opportunity for us to get on the road as a group and really go over and put in a good performance. I mean, we're really focused on what we need to do as a team. There's a lot of aspects of our game we need to clean up, and we just see that as another opportunity. And against a very good side, we can test out what we're trying to do against some very good opposition.
The injuries, Todd's good form, and the expected weather over there, is it a tough selection? It'll be one of your toughest, I imagine. Yeah,
it is. We're in a unique situation in that we don't see ourselves as being a genuinely good side yet. We're a side that's aspiring to be where West Coast are, but we've got 46 players on our list to choose from. So with that comes some selection headaches. You can argue that that we've got a group of 35 players who, other than the top 10 or 12, we struggle to differentiate between those players. So there have been some really good players and guys putting in really good performances at VFL level who haven't had their opportunity yet. So Cam Delaney's had one game, but he was outstanding in the VFL. Cam Paterson's been very good for a long time. Lockie Hanson's still playing back there. Nathan Grimer has now fully recovered from injury, and he played okay in the VFL on the weekend too. So with that, we've got some players who we probably considered at the start of the year in our best 22 who can't squeeze in at the moment. So it's a good problem to have.
Sorry, do you take Goldstein with you and then just make that decision at the last minute?
No, because we think we've got ruck coverage. I mean, with Drew Petrie being genuine ruck size, we can cover that. So the only reason Todd will come with us is because we're going to pick him in our team.
You mentioned it was such a healthy list, well, from the outside computer, and you mentioned all those guys in good form. Do you have to keep them motivated, or I mean, you work one-on-one with them for that, just get close and stuff like how do you keep that group up and
Yeah, well, look, the attitude that we're asking from our players is to make sure that they're holding their end of the bargain up, so that when their opportunity inevitably comes, they're ready to take it. And our players have held up their end of the bargain really well so far. So, no, I think that it's quite easy, Bruce, to keep players motivated because they know they need to perform to force their way into the side. And with all those players I mentioned, it's purely it comes down to form in the VFL. And if they're playing well, they need to play better than their counterpart who's in the AFL side. So motivation's not an issue for them, and their attitude has been fantastic. Even though there are a number of players who rightly could consider they're in our best 22 who are not there now.
How does Vince Kennedy rate impact on your selection, particularly by the key things?
Shouldn't affect us too much. We think that the Delaney, Ferrito, Thompson combination has worked quite well. We've got some forwards who can play both ends of the ground as well. So I very much doubt whether Josh Kennedy being out will affect our selection greatly.
We continue to see inconsistencies between the match review panel and the tribunal. How are the clubs and players feeling about that? Do you understand what's going on?
To be honest, I don't have an issue with it in any way, shape or form. I think that the match review panel are there to make a judgment. And if the clubs and the players disagree with that judgment, they have the right of appeal. And look, no doubt with the Lindsay Thomas charge, we were quite surprised by that. We didn't agree with it, but we had the channel open to us to appeal that decision, and we did. And Lindsay was let off the charge as we thought was the right decision made. So I think the process is working just as it should. The match review panel make a call. No one expects that the match review panel are going to get it right every time, but clubs and players have the right of appeal. And in all cases so far, the contentious cases that people are talking about, I think the right decision has been made. So it just shows the process is working, doesn't it?
The player has to go through that worry. The clubs have to organise themselves to get to the tribunal, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
Is it concerning though that more match review panel decisions seem to be wrong?
No, I don't have an issue with that. I think that if that, over a 6 to 12 month period, if that trend keeps continuing, then I'm sure the powers that be will make changes to that process. But I think, on a 1 or 2, 3 week basis, I've got no problem with the process as it sits at the moment. And in all cases, in my opinion, the correct decision's been made in the end anyway. So I think the process is working just fine.
Brad, what does it do to the psyche of a player, I guess, on how they may enter a contest next time?
Oh, I can only speak from experience with Lindsay Thomas. We encouraged Lindsay to keep playing the game the way he's been playing it, and his response since the Gary Rowan incident has been outstanding. I think it's actually, in hindsight, been fantastic for Lindsay because he's had to deal with some adversity. He's had to deal with the tribunal issue, and he's come through with flying colours. And his football speaks for itself at the moment. He's attacking the contest as hard as ever, probably harder than ever, and is playing some good footy. So, I think that's part and parcel. With players are really adaptable. We'll see with some of the rule changes that have been made, players adapt really well to those. And Lindsay's response has been fantastic for us.
Being along this trip you probably have to make, other than perhaps Darwin, how many extra players do you normally take?
We'll only take the travelling emergency, standard protocol for us. I think probably a bit too much is made of the trip to Perth. It's only, only 3 or 4 hours, so it's not a big deal. If we'll travel over Saturday morning, and if something happens, we can always fly another player over. So it'll just be the standard travelling party for us.
Brad, how does Jared McKenzie making his debut?
He's close. He's been emergency twice this year, and we recruited him for a specific reason because we felt he was the most outstanding kick in the draft last year, and it's something we really needed to bring into our side. But Brad is a work in progress in terms of his readiness to play AFL footy. He's an extremely driven, determined young man, and he wants to play immediately. But we've got to do the right thing by him and bring him in when he's ready. He's had some really good halves in the VFL, but he's yet to really dominate for a full 4 quarters. So we'll wait for him to do that before we bring him in.
You see reports in the paper today about Fremantle possibly offering Travis Cloke big money. As a coach of a club that's perhaps not financially strong, how concerned are you about free agency?
I've been on record before saying I'm not concerned about free agency in any way, shape or form. I think it's a fantastic initiative for players. I think it's primarily going to be used for players in the twilight of their career who are on the fringe of senior selection to extend their career. I think it's a great mechanism for those players to do that. Now, in the Travis Cloke example, I think clubs will make plays for players that can improve their list, but I still don't think that free agency is going to have a significant impact on the top 10% of your list. I'd be very surprised if players leave, those top 10 players on your list, if they leave under the free agency rule. Clubs generally keep the players they're desperate to keep.
Sam Wright's had a pretty good start to the season. A bit disappointing last week though. What sort of response are you looking for from him?
Look, the most disappointing thing with Sam's game is that he's taken so many steps forward, and we hold him in really high regard here at North Melbourne. But he a couple of poor reactions to some off the ball incidents, a 50-metre penalty, a free kick off the ball, just some undisciplined acts that we've addressed with Sam. And I expect a really disciplined yet aggressive response from him this week.
Just talk about Daniel Wells. He had a bit of a down game last week. He took him off early, but that's a bit of a big picture thing with next week's game. Do you need him to have a big game on a fast track like that for you to win?
No, we've worked really hard the last 2 years on taking or removing the reliance on Daniel Wells, Brent Harvey, Drew Petrie, Andrew Swallow. And one of the really pleasing things about the game against the Gold Coast on the weekend is that we didn't have a significant input from 3 of those. Andrew Swallow is terrific, but it was our younger players who really got the job done against the Gold Coast. So we've been really working hard on that even spread. And West Coast have shown us the way. That while Darren Glass and Daniel Kerr have been fantastic for them, it's been, in my opinion, Luke Shuey and Nick Nat-Nui and some of their younger players off half-back that have really taken them to the next level. So we can't rely on our elite players to get us over the line every week. We need a more even contribution from our younger players.
Brad, what's your thoughts on the tactics of taggers?
It's an aggressive, contested game. I mean, you don't go out there and let the opposition's good players play their way. Now, Brent Harvey and Daniel Wells get it every single week. You know, we will never complain about the tactics employed against them. We back the umpires in to do their job, and I think the umpires have got a really, really tough job there, because quite often they see the retaliation. They don't see the instigator. So all eyes will be on the instigator this week, I'm sure. So, particularly in Daniel Wells and Brent Harvey's case, my advice to them is to keep their focus on the footy. Expect to get aggressively defended and deal with it. It's been part of the game for a long time, and let's hope it's part of the game for a long time to come, because we play a contested game, and the good players have got to deal with that, and the best players can deal with it on a consistent basis. The ones who can't deal with it, well, they open themselves up to be targets every week.
Brad, you said you want to be at West Coast Star. Are you ready to win a game like this? Is your group ready to start consistently winning games like this?
Well, I think we're certainly in a position where we think our best football is good enough. Our challenge has been to produce that over a long period of time, and by that I mean for all 4 quarters. I don't think you go over to Perth to play West Coast and expect that 1 or 2 quarters of good footy will get the job done. Now, we need a really strong 4-quarter contribution. Now, we've shown we can do that, and we did that against Geelong, so that instills a certain element of belief. But we'll be really looking to build on that momentum. We let it slip a little bit against Sydney, and we're looking to regain that this week.